Hi, I'm Brian Greer. I'm one of the partners here at TaxConnex. And today I'd like to talk to you about switching sales tax outsourcing providers. It's a very common conversation I have with companies. They'll call us up, maybe they're outsourced to another company, and it's just not working for whatever reason. They might be getting a lot of notices, or maybe they can't get access to an individual, they can't get their questions answered. Whatever the case may be, they're looking at changing their providers. The conversation eventually turns into, well, what's the level of effort to really change providers? And I think a lot of times they're thinking about perhaps the difficulty they may have had initially setting up the relationship. So my first comment is to really not be too worried about the timing that it's going to take or the level of effort. However, if you are considering changing, let me point out a few things that you might want to be aware of. What I would suggest is to make sure you've got all of your documentation in place. And what I mean by that is make sure you've got access to all of your return copies, any open notices that might exist, but also make sure you've got access to your tax calendar that shows all of your registrations, your tax IDs, and especially your logins and passwords to the e-file websites. One of the areas that companies do get tripped up on when they do try to transition from one provider to the next are these logins and passwords to the e-file sites. Another area to be aware of is what your contract terms are. So several times I've seen a scenario happen where we've signed up a client, we start that transition service, or at least planning the transition, and then the client finds out that they have to deliver some type of notice. Maybe it's a 90-day notice to their existing provider, and they've missed that window. And now they've essentially renewed for another year, and they can't transition for another year. So definitely understand what your contract terms are and what that cancellation period is before you start to move forward with any type of transition. The last piece I'll share with you is really just having a plan for what do you want to do with notices. So once you transition to a new provider, you're probably going to continue to receive notices related to that prior period. So once you change providers, you may or may not get a lot of service or help from your prior provider. So understanding or having a plan as to what to do with those notices is helpful. So once you feel like you've got all of your ducks in a row and you've got all your documentation ready, again, I don't think this is really that difficult of a process. Typically here at TaxConnex, we're looking at about a 45 to 60 day transition period. So again, it's not as hard. I think in that second time around, just picking up that existing process and moving it to a new provider. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you again on a future Sales Tax Byte.